this position. And this is part of our commitment to make sure that there is gender equality in South Africa, but also to say women are recognized for their contribution and qualifications in the roles that they deliver on. She has been appointed on the position as the head of the public administration as we transition our work to a single public administration, and she's responsible for the coordination of the whole of government in the administration. And ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Pindile Bale. I thought you'll clap for her. How?
Oh, they don't like it.
She pays the president's salary, so you need to make sure that she feels comfortable.
She's the boss.
She's the boss.
She's the boss.
Yes, and given that you have been listening to the president from yesterday and today, we don't think there is a need for an opening remarks, but we'll then take questions from yourself as it relates to the work that we do, that the presidency does, and to the budget vote specifically. And I'm going to request that we try to stick to the things that are related to the budget vote as much as possible, so that and also not to repeat the same questions, so that we can all go back with different stories or different angles. Let's have a full conversation. We have set this session, we're anticipating that at the latest we must be, if we take an hour, 30 minutes maximum for the conversation, I think it will give us sufficient numbers. If you can finish early, it is no problem to all of us, because the day has been long. And I'll first take the first round of questions, and I'm going to take 5 questions at a go, so that we move a bit quicker. And when you give us the question, I'll want you to introduce yourself and the media house that you represent, and then we move along. And can we not do preambles and citations, and let's just ask the questions so that we can get to as many of us as possible. Thank you. I'll start at the back. I can see 5 hands at the back. Yeah, let's start in that order, from the one and the 3 on the same row. One on yes, you and the 3 on the same row, and yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, I have no mic yet. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. Mr. President, in the regarding Section 21 and the process.
We requested that you identify yourself and the media house you represent, please.
Sorry, Jan de Lange from Rapport newspaper. Mr. President, regarding Section 25 and the amendment of that section in order to make explicit what is implicit regarding expropriation without compensation, it seems as if the ANC and the EFF is moving closer to a proposal that will carry the House, that will make provision for state custodianship of land. Over the past year or two, I've covered several stories of failed examples where the state were the custodian of land. This morning I spoke to a farmer who was
Mr. De Lange, can we get to the question, please?
Yes, was leader of the farmer group. It's the second largest land restitution transaction in our history of 840 million rand, some 9,000 hectares of land. But the deal is failing because of state custodianship and land that's been given custodianship to people who's wrong people, there's violence. What is your thoughts on state custodianship with regards to land reform?
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just to follow on, Mike Cohen from Bloomberg News. Just to follow on from what my colleague asked.
Can we have the mic, because we can't hear him?
Sorry. Mr. President, Mike Cohen from Bloomberg News. Do you think it remains necessary
Mike Cohen from Bloomberg News.
Bloomberg, yeah. Do you think it remains necessary to change the Constitution? Does the provisions as it stands not offer you the tools you need to carry out the extent of land reform that needs to be done? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Minister. Konita Hanja from News 24. Mr. President, you said yesterday that you have been engaging with the Health Minister Did you ask him about the 7,000 rand renovations to his house, the personal benefit in the form of the what we've seen in media reports around benefit to his son from that contract of his proceeds from that contract that his department had entered into with a private company? And if so, what has the minister said to you? Second question, Mr. President, is there is a sense that that your administration defers political morality to law enforcement agencies. In this case, is it not a separate law enforcement and ethical leadership, two separate issues in this regard? If you could just weigh in on that. And then a third question from me is, are you concerned about the state of instability in the security and criminal justice system? If so, what are you doing about it? I talk about the police, the NPA, the State Security Agency, Defense. Thank you.
Jan Gerber, News 24. Mr. President, today and yesterday you spoke about your administration's fight against corruption. Yet all the...
Jan from News 24.
Jan Gerber, News 24.
If you can remove the mic when you speak so that we can hear you, because we're really bad.
Sorry. Mr. President, yesterday and today you spoke about your administration's work in the fight against corruption. Yet all the corruption-busting agencies' budgets has been cut. I understand there's fiscal constraints, but you have weird things like the Orgs has a smaller budget than the Police's protection services, and the public protectors' budget over the MTMF is the same as public works budget for gardening. So can you explain these budget cuts, is it the fight against corruption being a priority for your administration? Thanks.
And the last question, yes.
Good day, it's Carol Payton from Business Day. Mr. President, you spoke a lot about your reform program, your macroeconomic reform program, and yet we're still speaking about the same thing for 3 years. The minister has dug in on the 10 megawatt cap. The broadband auction has been delayed for at least 18 months to 2 years, and the critical skills list that was released was laughable. What action are you going to take now that we've been talking about these same three things for 3 years? And then secondly, why is it, do you think, that investors do not have confidence in this government?
Okay. Thank you. Mr. President, over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Minister Chaveni, for steering this ship. Starting off with Jan de Lange's question on the Section 25 process. Now, the discussions are ongoing, not only between the ANC and the EFF. The ANC has decided that it will engage a number of parties, so they are involved in broad consultation, following the various forms and levels of consultation that have ensued before this moment. And as the discussions go on, I mean, they are looking obviously at a number of proposals, and one of those is the issue that the EFF has put on the table. According to them, it's state custodianship of land, which in some ways could even be seen as the nationalization of all land into state hands. Now, the ANC's approach has always been you need to give tenure to South Africans, and tenure to South Africans means that ordinary people want to have ownership of land. And the resolution that we took was about ownership of land. People who used to own land were dispossessed of their land. Even under historic times, under communal ownership, it was communal ownership granted, but in the end, either the chief would be able to allocate land to a household, to an individual, and quite often they held that land in perpetuity, and it would be handed down from generation to generation, much as it was communal land. So the hunger for land has always been for people to have tenure. Now, I had the opportunity with Minister Nchabeni and Delil and Didiza to go to Tafelkop in the Limpopo province in Hasikukuni. Now, when we got there, these 30 farmers had been wanting to get ownership of land for more than 10 years. And they had come forward and made proposals, and it took them 10 years to finally get title over the land that they have been working for all these years. And they said this notion that the state owned the land and then parceled it out to them as leases didn't work for them, because they are professional farmers. They want to be able to go, one, and get loans. They want to be able to get water licenses. And when they go, they are always asked, where is your title over the land? We want a water license. We want to see a piece of paper that talks about this land being titled to you. And that informed me that the notion that we've had, which we will need to look at, that we just use a blanket type of approach, that we will own all the land and we will lease the land and rent it to you, maybe impeding the entrepreneurial aspirations of our people. Our people want to own the land and have it entitled to them. Once they have that, they are then able to go and get loans and do all manner of things. Now, this is what the farmers in Tafelkop told me. And I thought about it quite a bit and felt that in the end, people are driven by a whole set of aspirations and hopes and all that. And what you want to do as a government is to unlock all that and enable people to play out their aspirations and to be able to be fully entrepreneurial and not be held back. The farmers in Tafelkop who've been farming the land for 10 years felt that they were being held back. Soon after we handed the title deeds to them, they said the first stop we're going to make is to go to the bank to loan money because we want to expand. We're going to go to the water authority to get water licenses so that we can irrigate our land. So that to me is experience gathered on the ground. And you can go to a number of other places around the country. In Mpumalanga, a number of farmers have been hankering for tenure rather than just the perpetual leasehold. And we would gain a lot more if we were able to give people title. Now, currently, we may say we have a number of systems underway of land ownership or land tenure. Some is full title, and most of those people who have that have been white people. And when it comes to a number of other people who've been able to get access to land after 1994, it's been leasehold. And the others have been in communal communities. So the discussion does need to take place around that. And the governing party's resolution was to make sure that the land reform process that we should embark upon should lead to land being restored to the people, and that should also include tenure to land. Now, those discussions, in my view, should lead to some conclusion, and we're hoping that the various parties will be able to find each other at the parliamentary level and finalize a clear position on how to move forward. Now, with regard to Mike Cohen's question, is it really necessary to amend Section 25? Well, the view that has been taken is, yes, the Constitution as it stands does not exclude being able to expropriate land without compensation. And the view is that if it does not exclude that, you need to state it more explicitly so that it becomes clearer to everyone. And so that even if the courts have to interpret the Constitution, they are not, assuming or even doubtful or whatever. They should know that this is what the Constitution says. And truth be told, the historical situation that the majority of black people face in our country is that having been dispossessed of land, there is land hunger. And I think that's an issue that as South Africans we should not run away from. I've been saying over and over again that what we really need is to say, how collectively as South Africans are we going to resolve this issue, this inequity that happened in the past. This inequity requires a solution. And currently, over the past 7 years, the land reform process has not really been able to answer or to address this hunger. It remains, and I've dubbed it the original sin. And this original sin will remain forever a festering sore unless we address it. And we've got to address it frontally. We've got as a nation to say, this issue is the one issue that could set us back. And unless we address it and address it now effectively and make sure that people get land, we will not be able to find headway. Now, the expropriation bill is now being piloted through Parliament. Now, that expropriation bill has a number of indicative pointers of what is possible, because it also includes donations of land. Land can be donated, land can be expropriated, can be also expropriated with nil compensation. The Constitution also, as it stands now, says if you are to expropriate land, you need to take into account the history of that land. Whatever amounts of money were put in, either as assistance or subsidizing monies, need to be taken into account. How was it acquired? Was it, acquired through total removal of people in the most unjust manner? And when you have looked at all that, then you arrive at possibly a conclusion that could lead us somewhere. I am confident that if we address this issue of land collectively, as South Africans seeking a common future, we will be able to find answers. When I met the Minister of Health, we had a discussion, and when we met, we discussed the report that they had put together, that had been put together through the investigation in the department. And I said that this matter needs to be taken forward by the SIU. Did we discuss the 7,000 rand? No. That never surfaced. That had not come to my knowledge. So we did not discuss the 7,000 rand. Are we deferring our morality to state agencies? No, we are not. State agencies have to do their work. And it often happens when things like these happen that you actually want to go to the truth, to the heart of the matter. And as I said yesterday in Parliament, this matter is on my desk. This matter is not going to be swept under the carpet. This matter is going to be dealt with. And as it is now, I am dealing with the matter. And what is good, as I said yesterday, is that the Minister is cooperating. He is cooperating fully, and a number of things keep surfacing. They're surfacing about his son and monies that have been paid, and I'd like to enable the investigation to proceed. Now, the SIU has already proven to all of us that they're able to do their job. They're on top of their game, and they should be able to go to the bottom of this. And I know people want this to be done yesterday. I know there is that impatience, and they would like me to be decisive, to take action yesterday. And I've tended to be careful in doing these things, and I will want to wait for the full process. And I've not outsourced morality to law enforcement agencies. They do their work. They execute the work that needs to be done. Instability in law enforcement agencies. There are issues, yes, in the SAPS. There are issues in the SSA. I'm aware of those issues, and I'm dealing with them as well. And we're going to make sure that we stabilize those agencies as well. Those issues are top of mind to me, and are going to be addressed and resolved, because these are agencies that need to be providing service to our people, making sure that we address the issue of corruption, of criminality, and of security for the country in this sense of the SSA. So all these matters are also being addressed. To Jan Gerber, with regard to the cutting of budgets. Now, we're going through a fairly trying and testing time from a fiscal point of view. Our economy has taken a battering, and our expenses on our expenditure on a number of fronts have gone up. COVID-19 has not come cheap for us. The various measures that we took to secure the livelihoods of our people, and the measures that we are now taking to secure the lives of South Africans cost money. And from a fiscal point of view, and the debt burden that the country has that required that we reprioritize our budgets. And unfortunately, some cuts have had to be made in a number of places. And there is not a single line of expenditure that is not important to the life of South Africans and to the life of our country. Everyone, each one is important, be it students, be it old age pensions, be it the budget for the defense, to make sure that our defense is well prepared to defend the country, be it the budget for the police, health, early childhood development, you name it. All of them are equally important. And you can never say that it's better to cut here, to cut here. And of course, in order to conserve the resources of our country, we've got to reduce corruption, we've got to reduce unnecessary and wasteful expenditure. All that should lead to more resources being available. But as it has turned out, we've had to cut a number of areas, in a number of areas. And of course, we do not want ever to be in a position where we cut to a point where we're not able to fight corruption. Because fighting corruption is a priority. I've identified it as a key priority amongst the priorities that this administration has highlighted. So as we move forward, as we move into, for instance, the MTPPS in October, we will be looking precisely at our budgetary architecture, and also as we move forward to the next year as well. We are living through a very, very difficult period from a fiscal point of view. With regard to Carol Payton, on the issue of the limitation to the 10 megawatts, as you know, there's been a process of consultation. I think it's coming to an end soon, or just came to an end. There's going to be consideration of the positioning that we should take. Yes, it's been limited to the 10 megawatt, and there is a clear demand and clear indication that there are those who would like it to go beyond, and there will be great takers for beyond. And in terms of doing so, we've got to look at the various proposals that are on the table, and I'm also actively involved in how we can best position the issue of the limitation of megawatts. On the spectrum, I announced this afternoon that following ICASA's extension of the COVID-19, if you like, allowance for spectrum release, there is a need now to settle that legal process. And I've called on all partners, all stakeholders, and I've said that rather than wait for a year and a half, 2 years, or even more, there is a need for all of us to work together to put the interests of all South Africans ahead of our own corporate singular interests. And we need, I'd like them to look at the broad picture, and they must engage. There should be a process where mediation can take place and where agreement can be reached, so that ICASA can go ahead with the auction process. And I'm told that ICASA would be ready to roll it out, to go ahead with the auction process quickly, so that the licensing can be put in place. Well, you may well think that the skills list that has been put out is laughable. As I said in my input, the initial part of the skills has been put out, and of course it will be interesting to hear what the further proposals are with regard to the skills, and I think the skills issue to me is a matter that is easily resolvable. It's not the most difficult of matters. All we need to do, and correctly so, as a number of MPs said, we need to move quicker with our interventions, because it is only when we speed up with our interventions that we're able to do the reforms effectively. Why are investors not interested? I'm not so sure that is entirely accurate, because on the FDI side, just on foreign direct investment, South Africa remains an attractive destination for investors. And as I was saying this afternoon, there are quite a number of sectors where we are seen to be leading and most attractive. Business processing, which not many countries are excelling in, we are excelling, and we've become a very solid, attractive destination. For companies, global companies like your Amazons, still showing interest in us, your automakers, still showing the good appetite. I mean, I know some of them, in their investment considerations, they considered whether they should go to certain countries, with Thailand or the Americas and all that. They finally said, we settle for South Africa, because in South Africa we get most of what we want. We get a very skilled labor force, the infrastructure is good, and the government has been able to demonstrate that it is supportive to our investment initiatives. The investment conferences that we have held, bar the one that we held under COVID, demonstrated that there is still a lot of interest in South Africa. We still able, on the infrastructure side, Dr. Kgosi Ramaphosa has been able to hold symposiums with development agencies, funding agencies around the world, from the US, Holland, and Germany, and Britain, and they are all showing great interest in investing here. So I don't have a sense that investors, are shunning us. Even during COVID, I've been able to have investment interfaces online with investors in the US, and they're hungry. They say, when are you coming? Come to the US so that you can interact with investors who are interested in your country. On the African continent, we are the biggest FDI attractor as South Africa. No country is attracting more foreign direct investment than us. So, granted, because of the slowness of the reforms, there are those who say we would like to see more speed in moving ahead with the reforms, and that's precisely what we are doing. This administration is about reforming things that went wrong in the past and putting them right and moving forward. And I think on that we can't be faulted. We can only possibly be faulted on the speed that you're not moving as quickly as possible. On policy positions, we are very clear that we've got to reposition this country and put it on a much firmer footing, from dealing with corruption right through to attracting investment and taking the right policy moves that keep on changing for the better on an ongoing basis. So I think we should all be gung-ho about where we're going and continue talking the language that will make sure that investors do come and invest in our country. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me come this side, I'll come into the middle. I'll start here, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So it's going that way.
Sorry, I'm 3.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Minister. Mr. President, you spent, it's Spoongalwa from Newsroom Africa. Mr. President, you spent some time yesterday speaking of an ethical and a capable developmental state. And I'm sure, Mr. President, you will agree that the Digital Vibes scandal does taint not just your administration, but also the vaccine rollout program. And I know you say that you're waiting for the SIU, but I'm sure you also do appreciate that perceptions matter. The question, Mr. President, is that a risk you're willing to take, to have the entire program tainted by this particular scandal? And also knowing that ministers serve at your pleasure, and at the State Capture Commission, the Deputy Chief Justice asked you this question around suspension of people and allowing for processes to take their course, in that you do not have to wait for those processes. So are you willing to have the entire vaccination program, or rather, would you rather put these other considerations ahead of your government's integrity and also that of the vaccine rollout program? Secondly, Mr. President, it's been 2 years since you appointed your cabinet, and there have been some vacancies in cabinet. And you did, again, yesterday speak about the performance agreements that you've signed with the ministers. Should we read that you are satisfied with the performance of everyone in your cabinet, including the deputies? Is that why you have not made any changes? Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm resolved that Swo just wants us fired. That question, wherever there's a media interaction, he doesn't stop asking that question. Go ahead.
Thank you. Jan Janyabel for Marula Media. I don't want to fight, and therefore I'm turning to the Firearms Control Bill. The Firearms Control Amendment Bill states that the question of self-defense falls away as a reason to own a firearm. Are you in favor of this amendment bill, and why do you think that's a good idea? And then just secondly, on Section 25, maybe to make it very clear, given the mandate of the ad hoc committee, do you think it is implicit in Section 25 as it stands that there should be state custodianship of land?
Before we proceed, the question on the Section 25 of the Constitution have been thoroughly asked, so we'll need to move on from there. The President has responded adequately on that. Can we have your questions?
Sorry, Wendell from Reuters. While we're speaking, Mr. President, you did allude to the Section 25, the notion of courts. Are you aware that the notion of courts, the role of the court and its purview as the last final arbiter for compensation and stuff like that has been removed from the ad hoc report currently? Before the ad hoc committee from the ANC. That is an ANC proposal. The second question is, could you indicate to us when you expect troops on the ground in Mozambique? And this is with your, I'm aware it's a regional issue, but with your aton as the incoming chair of the political and defense organ in August, can we expect troops on the ground in Mozambique before December, before the end of the year? Or what are the major sort of hindrances for that? Is it the question of sovereignty on the side of Mozambique? Is it the question of funding? Who's going to fund it? Or is it the question of who's going to contribute what from the members in the region? And the third question, please, if you don't mind, Mr. President, relates to, under your stewardship, you've and your reformist agenda, you've taken a very strong line on anti-corruption. To what extent are you looking at the elections as a sort of a yardstick, as it were, of whether or not the message that you are trying to inculcate both within the state and within the party is actually finding resonance, as it were, amongst the electorate? Is the October elections a fair measurement of whether or not, if, for example, the ANC does poorly, it is a reflection on your leadership, or what does it entail from a political perspective and your agenda? Thanks.
There was a hand. Yes.
Thank you, Minister. Joseph Musia from SABC Radio. Mr. President, my question to you would be with regard to, you sounded very optimistic about the prospects, economic prospects of the country going forward and the interest from abroad in terms of investments. But one of the biggest problems that the country has faced over the past few years has been with state-owned enterprises. Joseph Musia from SABC. Are you concerned about the continuing decline in the performance of state-owned enterprises? Denel can't pay its workers. Petro SA is struggling to survive. I mean, there is a whole list. Despite all the efforts that have been put into correcting the SOEs, it does not seem to be improving. SAA is in trouble together with its subsidiaries. Mango is going to probably have to close soon. Are you concerned about this? Because the state has been pouring a lot of money into it. How is it helping in terms of other priorities that government has?
And number 5.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. President, my name is Thabo Mukoni. I work for the Sunday Times. What is the President's view on the office benefits of current members of Parliament and members of the executive, also including the post-retirement benefits that they currently enjoy, such as medical aid, free flights, and so on, in view of the current state of the public purse, in an environment where public servants are being told to accept no salary increases, yet ministers, MPs are enjoying very generous benefits from the taxpayer. The list is endless on this. I can go on free houses, cars, free flights, and so on. Can the country still afford this?
Mr. President, it's over to you. That was our 5th question for this round.
All right.
We're taking a set of 5 questions. This is the second round of the 5. We're going to take another round of 5. So we had 5 questions now. 5 people asking the questions.
All right. This firearms issue, that the requirement for self-defense is now been done away with. I've always had the notion that if you have a firearm and you have to use it, from a legal point of view, if you're under threat, you would be defending yourself. And the removal of that consideration, in my view, would be tested by the courts, because in the end the courts are the ones who've built up a lot of jurisprudence over many years, maybe more than 100 years, of the issue of self-defense, the utilization of being able to protect your own self, your body, and your property, and your family, and so forth. So I think in the end it is the courts that would have to rule on that, and I guess the courts will second guess what the legislatures want to see achieved on that score. I thought I did address the issue of Section 25 about state custodianship. And I must say it again, much as the Minister has said, it's been addressed. The notion of state custodianship, to me, is like you nationalize everything. Everything is nationalized, every piece of land. And that, for starters, would temper with the notion of tenure for individuals, on whatever entity, and you then hold the land at the behest of the state. And the concern I have with that is that it blunts your entrepreneurial initiatives. It blunts it, and in some cases could even kill it. And I say so advisedly from hearing from, if you like, rural people in Tafelkop, in Sikukuni, who've said, we've had these pieces of land, 189 hectares they had, and they've been in a way under state custodianship, and we have not made headway, and we would like to make headway. We would like to own these pieces of hectares, so that we can do business on them, we can trade, and we've proven to be good farmers. And one of the farmers a woman farmer was the farmer of the year, won an award, went to the United States, and some of them went to countries like Israel to see how the kibbutz system works. There's another system other than kibbutz, which they gave a name, and they said that system, the kibbutz one is the communal, the other one allows each individual to have their own piece of land and have a title. And that is what we want here as well. That will enable us to be able to be real entrepreneurs. If I want to farm pumpkins, I shoot carrots, cabbage on my piece of land. So I say that born out of the experience of real down-to-earth farmers, they say, we want title. Communal custodianship doesn't work for us. And I can't but be well informed by those ordinary farmers that I met there, because it is inherent in people to want to do their own thing out of their own pieces of land. And granted, it also begins to touch on this issue of the CPAs that we have, the Communal Property Association, where all the land is communally owned by everyone. And they told me that the reason why these have not worked, it's because they are communally owned and nobody takes responsibility. And they said to me, as an owner of the land, I will take full responsibility. And they said, 30 of us who are farmers, men and women, we work the land with our families and we take full responsibility. That is why we want title deeds. So to me, that just sends a clear message, even to us as policymakers, that we should not be making policies over the heads of ordinary people. We should listen to the lived experiences of people on the ground, rather than listen to our own slogans, listen to our own political speak. It is ordinary people who work through the land that we should listen to. Yes, there's a proposal on removing the role of the courts. But you can never really remove the role of the courts, because the Constitution in the end is interpreted by the courts. So whether we like it or not, it may sound good that we do, but in the end it is they are the courts. Their courts are there for that. They are going to interpret the Constitution. They are going to tell us whether this clause is a legally valid clause or not. So the Constitution, any law in our land, is interpreted by the courts. So we are a constitutional country, state. So it is the courts who will determine that. Now, you also asked a question about Mozambique. And your question is, can we expect troops on the ground in Mozambique? Now, before December. You even put a time frame to it. We are dealing with the issue of Mozambique. We held a double troika recently, as you all know, and we had sent a technical team to do the assessment of the theater where all these insurgents are killing people. And we've also had to look at the needs of Mozambique in this regard. What do they need? They need assistance on humanitarian grounds. Yes, they need assistance to be able to ward off the insurgents from a military point of view, from a hardware point of view. They need also financial assistance, and they also need political assistance. So all those matters are matters that are being looked at to see the extent to which we can pledge assistance to them. And as SADC, we've agreed that yes, we are going to assist Mozambique, because what is unfolding there could quite easily spill over to any of our countries. So we are highly aware and sensitive to that fact. As regards issues like, deployment of troops, these are matters that are of a security nature, and I guess once they happen, we will all get to know about it. You don't want to be involved in a war situation and tell your adversary that we're coming now, we're coming, get ready for us. You don't want to do that. So you want, and I know that the media is interested, when are you sending boots on the ground, when are you flying over? I'm afraid you just have to bear with us that that's the type of sensitive information that we will have to keep quiet about, and it gets to be known as the whole thing happens. Now there was a question on corruption. I was trying to listen.
There is a question that says you have been very strong on the anti-corruption message, and are you getting it embedded in terms of the electorate? Is that message going through? And related to that is that the local government elections, will they be, the outcomes thereof, will they be a reflection of the strength of your leadership of the country?
Of course. Yes, the message is getting through on corruption. It's getting through both in government as well as, if you like, in the governing party. It is getting through. The period that we've been through prior to now has been a testing period, a very testing period, and you can see the contestation, but also the resistance, because those who have benefited from corruption were bound, almost duty bound, to resist and to refuse to give up those perches that they were positioned on. But the message is getting through, and it's getting through. I mean, in the governing party, it got through, yes, over the years, but more prominently, if I can use that term, in December of 2017, when the party felt that it needed to draw the line in the sand and deal with corruption. And that process is now underway in the party, but we hear more to talk about what we're doing in government. And in government, I think all those who have eyes will testify to the fact that there's a process that is underway. We're repositioning a number of institutions that had been weakened, that had been captured. We're repositioning them, and many of them are beginning to function a lot better. When the PPE scandal broke, we set up the Fusion Center, which has enabled us to be able to have line of sight of the various acts of corruption that have taken place. And the SIU, I'd like to believe, came into its own, and now the NPA is going to be able to deal with that. And the investigative directorate is also working, and the Hawks are working. So the message, even in government, is getting through. It will take time, because corrupt tendencies and elements have embedded themselves deeply in the fabric of government institutions. But now they know that we are shining a light on many of these corrupt activities. So it is getting through. Is it resonating well with the electorate? I'd like to believe that it is. For the simple reason that people abhor corruption, because they know that corruption robs them of what duly belongs to them. They know that it destroys service delivery, as they've seen it in the various areas where they live. If a burst pipe is not being repaired, they, more than anyone else, will know it's because this and this corrupt act has taken place. If houses are not built and only foundations have been put in place, they will know more than anyone else that the houses are not being built for this and that reason. So the message is resonating well. And as regards the returns of the elections, and of course that is the final arbiter, really. The people are the final arbiter, and if the message resonates with them and they can see, and we've often said in the governing party, when they see that we're serious about corruption, we're fighting corruption, the people will, gravitate towards the ANC. And we did say, as we went to the 2019 elections, that people were feeling disenchanted with the ANC because of corruption. Corruption was one of the key challenges that people were facing, even in our own surveys and our dipstick sort of surveys. We saw that. So once we deal with corruption effectively, they will become much more attracted to the ANC. As regards the returns, I mean, every politician really is put on test. Every leader is put on test when election time comes. And if you have not performed well, it's up to the party to say, you have not led us well. And so we are going to take ABC action against you. We need a new leader or whatever. So that can happen, and we've seen it happening in parties. It also happens in the animal kingdom. If you watch animal movies, you'll find that if a particular animal is the leader of the pack and does not lead them well, they turn against that leader. So Joseph asks the issue of SOEs. We have repeatedly said that our SOEs are a huge challenge, and that is why we've highlighted bringing our SOEs back to a healthy state is one of our key priorities. Some are still in serious trouble. Denel is one of those. Petro SA is also one of those. But believe you me, work is underway to resolve all those troubled SOEs. I'm determined that we should do a lot to repair them and to put them in a much more healthy situation. Now, the establishment of our SOE Council is going to stand us in good stead, because that council is going to be able, and it's got really outstanding people. They're going to be able to come up with a lot, as they are now, of solutions of how we can repair, reposition our SOEs. I forgot the gentleman from Sunday Times who asked about benefits.
Thabo Mokoni.
Oh, Thabo Mokoni. The benefits that members of parliament have. And I guess in the end you were saying, should those not be done away with? Should they not be cut? These free flights and all that, particularly as we are going through difficult times. You will know, of course, that members of parliament have not had an increase this year and last year. I've, with a very heavy heart, once the commission has made a recommendation, I, as president, have had to say no to increases that may well have been proposed. And this year, the commission said nil increase. In previous years, they had said put increases slightly higher, and I kept cutting back because I felt that as public representatives, we should not be enjoying the largesse in a way where we almost, bring out the ire of our people. And I felt that we need to be constrained and have fewer benefits in terms of wage increases or salary increases. Now the benefits have been there. It's always, I found, very difficult just to take away benefits from people. But I guess, in really trying and very difficult times, there will come a time when, yes, those might, I don't know whether they can be looked at. But for now, I think MPs have really been cut to the bone because they've had no increase or meaningful increase for quite a while. And quite often, they may seem like to many people that they are living it up, they have a really great life. And believe you me, it's not. I was once a member of parliament. Once you're a member of parliament, and you see the other problem that we have is that the center where we work is Cape Town, but we live far away from Cape Town, where our families are. Being a member of parliament basically means that you're setting up two homes. You've got a home where you come from, and you've got a home here. And quite often, many people don't move their homes altogether because their tenure here is very time-bound. It's 5 years. So quite often, you don't want to uproot your family to come here. So in the end, you have two homes. You buy one loaf of bread at home, you've got to buy another one here. You buy two loaves, two TVs, two whatever, nearly everything. And I have often seen members of parliament, which publicly may seem like they're living it up, but they're not, believe you me. The work we take on or we impose on them, on members of parliament, is quite costly. And many of them don't end up making ends meet. Like everyone else, yes, they have a pension, they have a medical aid, and if one has to quarrel with them, it's the flight tickets. It is ministers who will have flight tickets most likely, but members of parliament, because they have to move up and down, they usually exhaust those, but we will not get into that. So I would say, I think we should bear in mind that they have not had an increase for quite a while, and balance that with the notion that we may have that they are living it up. Thank you, Minister.
You've got two questions that you didn't respond to. Which are the question? The first one is the digital vibes, whether it's not tainting your campaign on including the issue around the performance agreements of ministers and the reshuffle or replacements of of vacancies.
SPU would never want me to get away without addressing that one. Yes, SPU,
Mr. President,
page 2 pages.
Mr. President, before you proceed, we're not doing follow-ups. We have another hand. We said we're going to do an hour, 30 minutes, and that's all. We can't change the rules. So let's go with that. I'm happy to take a side question when you're done. No, it's not unfair. We gave you time to ask all the questions. We have not cut you on the number of questions. Mr. President, please proceed.
SPU, I apologize. I flipped 2 pages, and I've written your question here, so I answer it. The digital vibes issue, am I taking a risk? I'd like to say that that's why yesterday up front I said I'm attending to this matter. And as I said earlier, obviously you would like me to act now or yesterday, but I'm addressing this matter. And I did say it is serious and it is disturbing, and I'm addressing it. And am I taking a risk? No, I don't believe so. Because I would only take a risk if I did not address it at all. And there have been situations where incidents like these have happened and nothing happens. If nothing would be addressed and dealt with, you would be justified in saying this is a risk. So I'm addressing it. I've met the minister. He's given me an explanation, and investigations are underway. And as we've said, more information comes to the fore, and it is being addressed. And I did say that this matter will be addressed to finality, and it will be a transparent process, and everybody will get to know what we have done. Is this going to lead to a vaccination program flagging or being derailed? I don't think so. The vaccination process is under the direction of the IMC, which the Deputy President is leading. So I get reports on a continuous basis. I get reports on when the vaccine's arriving. Is the plane landing tomorrow or whenever? J&J, what is happening? Do I need to talk to somebody else? I get all those reports. And those reports come from the process that we have set up in the IMC and also in the department. We have a deputy minister who is also involved in all this. So I don't believe that the vaccination process is at risk at all. Not at all. We are going to proceed with our vaccination process as we have agreed or decided. Changes to cabinet, yes, I know you would want to know when is cabinet being reshuffled. Are we bringing about changes? Am I satisfied with the performance of ministers? Shouldn't I change this one and that one? All I can say is that changes to cabinet are the prerogative of the president, and the president may well decide the timing, the personalities that are involved. Those are matters that the president, and as the Constitution says, the president and the president alone decides on that. So I know you would want me now, today, to tell you this is the change I'm going to effect, but Sbu, no, it's not going to happen.
No, Sbu, I'm still facilitating. Can we take the last set of hands? There's the gentleman here in the middle, the lady. The camera is closing a view. The cameraman is closing a view of me, of the hands that are up. So it's the gentleman in the middle as number 1. Number 2 is the lady. 3, 4, and those are the last 4 hands that we have. You had asked a question. We're not taking a repeat. Thank you. Your number. Yeah, you are 3, and then she's 4. Yeah. Thank you. Let's start.
Thank you, President and Minister. Mr. President.
No, your name, sir?
My name is Bulelani Philip from SABC. Mr. President, in your address during your budget vote, you said the allegations against the health minister, you took them very seriously and you were disturbed by them. There are calls that at the very least, if those words are true and you have meaning to them, the minister ought to be placed on suspension or at least take leave of absence until this SIU investigation is completed by the end of this month. That's the first question. The second question, the country is in the middle of load shedding. And the goalposts of solving the problem keep shifting. And the solutions for that load shedding also keeps changing. In fact, even when you were the head of the war room for ESCOM, you had undertaken that the challenges would be sorted out within 18 months. Now, Mr. President, as we sit here today in 2021, are you able to put your head on the block as in when will this problem be finally sorted out, given your objectives on structural reforms, particularly on the energy sector? Lastly, a colleague of mine wants to know whether are you going to be attending the G7 meeting next week, and whether what will South Africa be championing there? Thank you so much.
Lindsay Dentlinger, ENCA. Minister, we don't know
the name.
Lindsay Dentlinger, ENCA. Mr. President, we don't know for how long a lockdown in various levels will be necessitated. Some of opposition parties during debate yesterday criticized government for vesting too much power in one minister, calling for amendments to the Disaster Management Act. What is your response to those who say your command council just has too much power and you're usurping the role of Parliament by not allowing them to debate whether continued lockdowns at various levels are necessitated? Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Minister. My name is Babalo Ndenze from Eyewitness News. My question, Minister, is just a follow-up on the spectrum.
We can't, you are too close to the mic, so the name?
I think the mic is...
No, you were too close to it, so we couldn't hear.
Just a follow-up on the question.
The name?
My name is Babalo Ndenze.
Okay.
From Eyewitness News. My question is just a follow-up on the spectrum question from earlier. And I'd like to link it with performance agreements of, the various ministers or the relevant minister. And just a quick glance at this performance appraisal, it just says high demand spectrum allocated by December 2020, which has not happened clearly. Mr. President, these performance agreements, if I can just add on one more, and the police minister, for example, contact crime, violent crime, murder, attempted murder, you quite clearly state there in the performance that it must be down by 7.9%. But at least 2 weeks ago, he reported that there was an increase in murder, almost 9% increase in attempted and murder. These are clear failures, Mr. President, and when I look at these performance agreements that you've set, these targets that you've set, are you going to be taking any action against any of these ministers that seem to be failing in their duties? And there's also a follow-up question to that is, the public protector says, you've been ignoring her. You're not picking up her calls, you're not answering her emails. She was on the radio yesterday speaking to my colleague, and she says that you failed to reprimand certain ministers, and she's been trying to make contact with your office on several occasions, and she's been ignored. She issued a statement earlier today saying that the health minister now, on a separate matter, is also ignoring her on 3 occasions, 3 subpoenas that were ignored by Zwelinkize. Is this not an insult to a Chapter 9 institution, whether there is differences with the incumbent for whatever reason? Is it not an insult to this Chapter 9 institution where she gets ignored by not just the president, but by a minister who's clearly embattled? And can you not suspend her? It's within your powers, now that she's on an extended sabbatical and facing a parliamentary inquiry. Is it maybe not an option that you have considered at all?
Good afternoon. Marianne Merton from the Daily Maverick. My question directly relates to your comments yesterday, where you said that you're making the presidency the heartbeat of government, pushing all government processes. And we've seen a number of concentration of powers within the presidency in the last couple of years. One of the outcomes of that is that we've had a number of ministers and their senior officials coming here to Parliament not answering questions from MPs. And the reason is that, oh no, the President chairs the SOE Council, or the President chairs the Infrastructure Coordinating Council, oh no, wait, the President is chairing the Employment Stimulus Program, so the President will make the announcement in due course at an appropriate time. Your comments on this, is there perhaps a message you may have for those ministers and their senior officials, including DGs, with regards to accountability to Parliament, which is also constitutionally mandated? Following on from that, I'm following on from my colleague Spoon Galwa, and I'm taking my chance. Given the concentration of power in the presidency and the changes that you are and have been implementing since February 2018, when can we expect an announcement on a smaller, fit-for-purpose cabinet? If you don't want to give us names and numbers, maybe perhaps just a date. Thank you.
I think, Mr. President, I'm sure you know that question will continue to be asked, no matter how much you respond to it, to say it's your prerogative. And by the way, Marion, the ministers are not happy with that question because we don't like to be reshuffled. So I have to speak on behalf of my colleagues.
You want me to go?
Please
okay.
go.
Right.
Those are the last questions, Mr. President.
All right, to Bulelani. Oh yes, you say, given what has been reported on minister and all that, shouldn't he take a leave of absence? Or be suspended? These are matters that are obviously have to be looked at. And I have said I'd like this process to ensue and would like people to believe and trust that I am handling this matter and will handle it to finality because, as I said, it is concerning, it is disturbing, and I raised it frontally because of its importance and also demonstrating that this matter is not going to be swept under the carpet and it will be dealt with as it should in terms of our principles, in terms of our value system that we want to inculcate and embed in our government processes. So be rest assured that this matter is going to be handled in a way that will give credence to our adherence to the principle of good governance, ethical leadership as well. So that is a must, and it is going to happen. On load shedding, when will I be able? Do you want me to put my head on the block? When will we see the end to load shedding? We've put in place a really good management team at Eskom. And as we have said, the degradation that we've had in Eskom has taken a number of years to get where it is. What we are now dealing with, it's not malfeasance. It is the breakage of machinery, where the power stations are operating and they break down, and that happens because over the years we have not focused on maintenance, and this is happening not because anybody willfully desires that it should happen. And the issue of mismanagement, I would say, is no longer the issue. It is the issue of the machinery, the equipment that we've got in place. We've now got good management that is really, truly, and honestly working at repositioning Eskom. And they're dealing with the current situation now of Eskom, and they're also preparing for the future, this separation, dealing also with other corporate or financial issues, such as the huge debt. So they've got many balls in the air, and I know that Andre de Ruyter, who's a really good and top-performing business leader, is doing the best that he can to reposition Eskom, and I'm convinced that they will get on top of this problem. It's obviously a challenge when you're dealing with machines that break, machines that have not been well maintained in the past. It is a big challenge, but they're seeking to deal with it, and it's also good to know that they are very supportive of alternative power being made available, so that it lightens the burden on Eskom's side, so that they are able to generate energy much more efficiently. And I think as we proceed, getting more alternative power and lightening the burden on ESCOM, they will be able to get on top of the challenges that they face. Lindsay asks about lockdown, that all power seems to be vested in, say, one minister, and that's removed the power from Parliament. Let me say, power is not vested in their minister. Power really is in cabinet. It is in the end cabinet that takes the decisions. Now, the role of cabinet in our political architecture is such that it is the executive authority that takes decisions on behalf of the people of South Africa. Parliament has its own role, and obviously the role of Parliament is to have oversight on what the executive does, and to scrutinize what the executive does. And so one minister does not have overarching power. Whenever the decision is put out, it will have gone through various processes. On the coronavirus pandemic, it goes through the process of the health, and health does not act on its own, it acts through the Medical Advisory Committee, and there are experts who stand behind that. And then we've got net joints, which is an agglomeration of all the executing arms of government that encompass nearly everything from police, military, you name it, various departments. Every department at the DG level is represented there. And thereafter it comes into the NCCC, and the National Coronavirus Command Council is a recommending structure. It synthesizes what has been put before it, and having done so, it then leaves the decision to Cabinet. Then Cabinet examines what has been put forward, and by the way, there's another filter, and that filter is the PCC, the Presidential Coordinating Council, which is made up of our premiers as well as our mayors from metros. So a combination of all that then finally leads to Cabinet taking a decision, which the Minister of Cooperative Governance, who is the executing authority in terms of the Disaster Management Act, then executes. The regulations are then drafted with the active participation of all the other ministries, and they then finalize the regulations. So it's not one ministry that takes all the decisions. It is a combination of all those entities acting together, and which are then communicated by and through the Ministry of Cooperative Governance. So when the Ministry of Cooperative Governance makes an announcement or whatever, never think that they sit back and they decided that this is what we want to do. Nor is it the President, when he does those announcements, who decided that today I'm going to impose a lockdown, or I'm going to move the nation to level 2. No, it isn't. It is a very involved process, and we never miss any step in all that we do. We've been very careful from a scientific point of view, to a health management point of view, and to the actual disaster management itself. So the notion that one minister decides and rules the roost is not correct. And Parliament has its own role. And Parliament is fully entitled to examine and scrutinize what we do as the executive, as Parliament must, because the separation of powers means that that's precisely how we should approach our governance process. Babalo from the Eyewitness News looks at the performance agreement and relates it to the spectrum. Yes, the spectrum, we wanted it to be concluded by December. But then what then intervened, and we did not foresee that the ICASA would be stopped in its tracks. because in the end it was ICASA. And all we ever did with ICASA was to egg them on, to encourage them to speed up the process. In the end, because they are an independent entity, they had to take their own decisions. And having taken their decisions, they then put it out to tender, and boom, all of a sudden, a legal suit stops the whole process. And because we are governed by the rule of law, it is this legal approach that sometimes stops everything. But as I said this afternoon, I'd like to see a much speedier process of resolving this matter, and that the parties, as I called upon them, to find a way of resolving this so that the country can move on, because it is putting the brakes on the development of our economy, which is very, very critical. So, yes, it should have been done last year, and in examining the performance agreement, we did not foresee that one of the players would interdict us. Ministers who fail to live up to their objectives, obviously I evaluate and I look very closely at the performance of all the ministers. The Deputy President and I sit back and we evaluate and we look at the performance against the agreements. We're then able to reach a conclusion, and clearly there are various ways in which we're able to interface and interact with our ministers. And I tend to meet ministers on a number of issues. On a regular basis, we discuss what's happening in their departments and all that. And we also, so starting a very interesting process, which hitherto was never really the case. And maybe in a way it also answers Marianne's question of the centralization. Let me touch on that as I also give you an insight of what we're seeking to do. And then I'll come back to this question of the PP. Yes, of the PP. Now, what we now moving into, and as not to make this presidency an overpowering and too centralized, is to enable, to ensure that every department, every ministry is able to give everyone on the cabinet line of sight of exactly what they are doing, how the work in each department is doing. And this is this attempt and effort of getting rid of the silo approach to governance. In the past, nearly everyone stuck to their lane. They did what they have determined they should do, yes, in terms of their plan. And at times when their planning sometimes does not go as well as it should, they stick to it and they solve their own problems. We are now doing governmental more cooperation, and to get various ministries to be able to share what they do with everyone else on a collegiate basis. This is giving more meaning and life to cooperative governance. Now, the presidency's role is to enhance coordination and cooperation in government. What may seem like the presidency is appropriating all power is actually enhancing cooperative and coordinated government. We want government to act as one, to be able to have line of sight of what we are all doing, so that we are able to share best practice. We are able to come up with ideas that may enlighten one or the other. And this I have found to be a better way of governance, rather than everyone just sticking to their lanes. Of course, from an accountability point of view, you've got to stick to your knitting so that you are able to report. Now, when it comes to what you've said about ministers not reporting and ducking and diving from questions, they should not be doing that. They can't hide behind the shield of the presidency. The presidency's role is to coordinate and to join up government, to make sure that government works more effectively on a joined up basis. And that is why we inaugurated the district development model. When I looked at how we're functioning as government, vis-a-vis the lower levels of government, at local government, provincial, I came to the conclusion that we are too disaggregated, we're too disjointed, and we need to join up government in a more structured way so that we have one plan for one government from top to bottom, and each layer of government should be able to talk to the other, and we should approach things jointly. And the practical effect of that will enhance the work that we do as government, because no department will act in a solo manner and go and do its own things to the exclusion of others. For instance, if we are going to build a school, a school is a good example, or human settlement facility, we should get all government departments working together, and would like that too to be discussed at cabinet level, that this ministry is now ready to unfold this big project, but then all others should join in. Police should be part of the mix. Health should be part of the mix, and everyone who leads a particular department should be involved, rather than to do it on a solo and a silo basis. So what does the presidency seek to do? The presidency sits at the apex of government, and it has line of sight of nearly everything that the various departments are doing, and all it does through its various entities. Some are the project management office, and some are the Vulindlela. We're then able to have sight of what's, and pull various departments in and have joint meetings, have discussions, and that's where we are getting a great deal of strength. And that's why the Vulindlela process and the PMO process is going so. And we are then able to bring your top experts, top leading people who don't want to do what departments do, who coordinate, who help to facilitate. And sometimes one department may find it difficult to have a good cooperation with an official in Treasury. Our task is to unlock that process, because it is at that level that things get done. So ministers should not go to portfolio committees and hide behind the presidency. They should answer questions, because they are the executing arms of government. So when are we migrating to a smaller cabinet? You would like to see a smaller cabinet. We did reduce cabinet. We used to have a much larger, and structure of government is a matter that we keep looking at, and look at the effectiveness. We are now in the process of looking at the effectiveness of the changes that we brought about. Are the ministries that we joined together, and the departments that we joined together, working as efficiently? So we're looking at that. So right now there is no plan to move or migrate to a much smaller cabinet at the moment. Oh yes, there was the earlier question which I need to respond to. The the public protector, that she's ignoring, and we are ignoring her. I, as president, could never ignore any arm of the state, be it the judiciary, Human Rights Commission, the Public Protector, the Gender Equality Commission, or any other. These are all arms of the state, which I'm enjoined as president to work with. So I'm not aware, quite honestly, of this neglect, and it's not an insult. It would be concerning if we were ignoring the PP. It would be concerning, and it's not something that we would like to see ourselves doing. You want to know whether the PP should not be suspended? No, that's not on my radar screen at all. I mean, one must have just cause for suspending any official of state. So there is no just cause to be able to do that. I will certainly look into this notion or allegation that we are ignoring the PP, and it is also concerning that other officials in government would be seen as ignoring the PP. The PP's office is a very important office in our political architecture or constitutional architecture, which we dare not ignore at all. So I don't ever see myself, and our ministers should never also ignore the PP. Minister, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you.